What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Hart, back with another video. If this is your first time to my channel, please be sure to subscribe. Drop a like if you watch this video throughout its entirety. It will be long, but if some of y'all out that actually watched the whole thing, please drop a comment that you did, and even drop a suggestion or two of what you want me to talk about or want to see. But today's video is my second podcast, and I realized while trying to do this YouTube thing that I want to do more podcasts than I do videos, because I have a lot to say on a lot of different things. My opinions may be a little bit obscure, they may be a little bit different, but it's a want to spark conversations that are more ever uncomfortable, that we just haven't had in a really long time, or the conversations that we refuse to have. And I feel like that I would like to spark some of those conversations, whether that be within our community, whether that be certain things I see on social media that I just rubs me the wrong way. And I feel like it rubs a lot of people the wrong way too, but you just can't say anything. And just what's going on in the world right now, because there's a lot of unfortunate things going on right in front of us. And I guess we can start there, because if anybody is into the stock market, you see what happened today. The rich people kind of got their way, whether that was what they essentially did is they just halted stocks. So if anybody's into stocks that doesn't know what happened the last few days, there was a short sale on a lot of companies that weren't doing so well, and very rich, wealthy hedge fund managers decided to put all their money on the shorts. And a group of people on Reddit essentially did the exact opposite, and just started buying like crazy. And that way the hedge fund managers would lose their money, because obviously they bet on the stock going down because nobody was buying it. And so you had retail investors, common people just like who aren't hedge fund managers, who just like me, just your average Joe, that was like, all right, I'm gonna pick up these AMC stocks, and I'm gonna pick GameStop and get these call options and do all of that, and started making crazy amount of bread. I think a lot of people can speak for that. Like, I think some guy turned 50 racks into 17 or 12 million. That's crazy. But the thing is, these rich people do that all the time. Like, that's they bully the market the same way. And it's not market manipulation. It's just like, we're doing the same thing you're doing. We just came together because we don't have the same capital that everybody else does. So like, why does it matter just because now you're losing money, you're upset, so upset to where you got all these places like Robinhood, like Webull, just all these places to actually trade stocks, you got them to halt it. Like, they were just like, all right, bro, no more. And there's certain things coming out now that like Robinhood is liquidating people's accounts at like random prices. I think today it dropped down to like 118. Some dude Robinhood just stole and liquidated their account. Like, that doesn't make any sense, and it's not regulated at all. But it's like, it just opens and shows you more about that, like, nothing is true. It's no government, or especially like us or the US, is not really a pure form of capitalism. It's just the rich eat, and the poor just watch the rich eat, and there's nothing they can do, because they blatantly will do it right in front of you. Literally, like, that happened. And we're we're trying to bring up awareness, trying to use social media as a platform to maybe do something. But like, they just literally said, just stop. GameStop, we're not trading it anymore. AMC, we're not trading it anymore. There was so many, like a few penny stocks like yesterday that drove up, that were making a lot of people money, as they should. Because if you can put your mind to it, I think that's one thing 2021 has made us realize, bro. If we put our mind together, all of our minds, and put the differences aside, like, we could do a lot of great things. But we just choose to do certain, I guess, not the best things. But aside from that, you compare that to what's going on today, to what's going on back in India with the farmers, man. And that's really brutal to see, to know that you can't really, like, what can you do? These governments just have media blackouts to where they don't want to, then they send out the police to just tear gas, to, like, it's so sad. I'm most of the time I'm lost of words, but we've seen the same thing happen here, the same thing that's going on in India right now, to an extent of peaceful protests being breached by government to spark conflict, just so they can beat innocent lives, just so they can kill innocent lives. And it's just sucks. It sucks a lot. There's an individual, Mr. Harkirt Singh, who's right now fighting for a lot of things, and he's being falsely imprisoned. And I think as of yesterday or 2 days ago, he was given a death penalty, for charges that aren't even against him. That aren't even really just falsified allegations that went to India for his wedding and got picked up by the police, and nobody's, they've just kind of been torturing him since. And it's like, wow, that happens all around the world. And that is just really, really, really sad. And the common man can try to come together to the best of its abilities, but sometimes it's just the harsh reality of things that, like, these big governments, this corruption, these leaders can really just use their little paintbrush and stroke whatever they want to. And that part really sucks. But it's almost a call to action to, like, what are we going to do about it? And you can either just sit there and let it happen to you, or we can spark some change. Now, the change, I'm just as confused and don't really have the answers that maybe some of you guys might have, but, like, what do you do? I know in India, the farmers are raising their voices, protesting, like sleeping, outside of Delhi for 2 months, and then they finally get the chance on Republican Day. They showed out in huge amounts, and I think the largest tractor rally in the world, a protest in the world, and which is incredible. But still, the opposition is the police just waiting to, like I said, tear gas, beat these innocent people who are just trying to protest something that is affecting their day-to-day lives, affecting their livelihoods, affecting their way to eat. And you're having corporations come in and tell you, what you can and can't do. And that's very messed up. I'm trying to keep this pod PG rated, I guess, so the cuss words will be at a limit, I hope. But I might just come to a point where I just start throwing them out there. Because it's very, very messed up. And we oftentimes I know I live in a very condensed bubble, where you don't really look outside your bubble. You're just concerned about your bubble to get you through your day, to get you through, whatever you're going through. And then when you look at the broader things, things on a grander scale, it gives you a sense of appreciation to maybe what you have, and the things that you're complaining that you don't have, right? And it's like, man, like, these people's livelihoods are being ripped away from them. They're being told the prices, the rates at what they should sell their crops for. And you try to protest, you try to get your voice out there, and it gets combated with tear gas. Police ready to just beat whoever comes in. And then you have supporters, and that's the part that messes with me the most, is you have people out there supporting and alleging the farmers as terrorists. So you have people supporting the power and the injustice. I'll call it for what it is. It's what it is. It's unjust. And you have people supporting the system because a lot of people think that it's okay. Which brings me back to, I guess, last year around the Black Lives Matter protests and the Black Lives Matter awareness that was brought up. And this is going to be this is the whole part of my pod, is to be very uncut, very truthful, and just laying it all out there. Now, a lot of brown people had a hard time understanding why Black people were fighting for injustices, or what the injustices that were going on. And I'll bring you back to a family experience. I've had relatives, I had families who've talked to me and who said, Black lives matter, but that's, who's saying that the other lives don't matter, right? And the argument's never been that, white lives don't matter, Mexican lives don't matter, minorities' lives don't matter. But in the whole grand scheme of things that we're looking at, Black lives matter too. That was the whole point, I wish maybe that could have been added on into the slogan, that Black lives matter too. Not to say that other lives don't matter, but, I had to butt heads with a lot of my relatives because their argument was they didn't really get it. And the reason they didn't get it is because the way African Americans are treated here is how Sikhs are treated in India. And that acceptance, you can say, our people are often I wouldn't say accept it, but they see it here and they're like, well, this is the same thing that happens to our people out there, and it's not okay, but it's just how government works. That you have a race or you have a certain group of people who are somehow, some way seen better than, or seen as the elite, or seen as the measuring stick, or seen as, like, I don't know what, but you compare it and you're like, well, in India, Hindus and Muslims, they're kind of at the top, and the Sikhs have been fighting for their lives for years, and we're just gonna keep fighting. We're just gonna keep fighting the good fight. And they compare it to, one of my relatives was like, you know what, like, that's cool, like, Black lives matter too, but like, it's just government, it's just how it is, and I'm like, how are you okay with that? It was like, what can we do? Like, what are the protests, what do the protests do? What does the awareness do? And I think it's clear as day to see as kind of what happened. The black voter got out, they voted, and flipped Georgia, flipped Michigan, so much so that it was considered a fraud, or you have people who are considering the votes fraud because a certain group of people who they were limiting the access to vote finally got out and voted. So to all the naysayers to say, like, how does the protest, how does it not work? And I guess that's the light at the end of the tunnel for my people back home, is you got to keep fighting the good fight, because the governments will try to always hold you down. They will always try to hold you down, regardless of what they might say, they might do. Just understand that government doesn't really work for you. They don't work alongside you. They work against you, and that's not okay. I think in other successful countries, it's not really like that. Some of the more low-key countries, you don't really see that as much as you see it in the bigger countries, because you can, if one could argue, that's why they're so successful. But yeah, like I just don't understand that. And my people, a lot of my relatives have had that argument, like, okay, who's to say our lives don't matter too? But it's like, okay, man, you gotta stand up for what you believe in. And at some point, African Americans across this country had enough for how they were getting treated. And the sad part is that they're still going on, which is more messed up. Like, yeah, the progress that has happened has been amazing. It's been awesome to see, but the real change happens, like, it's gonna take years and centuries to really move the needle. But as an analogy once heard, you're just moving. It's all about what is it called? What was it saying? It's called field placement. Like, we're just all these movements, these small rises to action, these small protests. And by no means are they small, but just saying in general, the protest, the awareness being brought up, is just moving the field position. So you're just getting closer and closer to the end zone, because it's a very, very long fight. Like, it's a continued fight for hundreds of 200 years that has to continue on in order to some significant change to happen. And I would say shifting from that, the protest, the real world, moving over to kind of the meat and potatoes of what I want this podcast today to be about, is the uncomfortable conversations that we fail to have as brown people, as brown kids, and even as brown parents. and I'm a first generation immigrant child. Even though I was born in the States, my parents were born and raised in another country for 25, 27 years essentially. So imagine when you're 27, your principles, your foundations, your customs, the way of life you know is one way. Getting up, going to a completely foreign country, completely shifting, moving away from family, being on your own, and essentially start with nothing and build up an empire that is sustainable. That's what I can speak for a lot of people that I know. That's what a lot of brown people have done in this country. They've came from nothing, with nothing, in hopes of chasing a dream of essentially the dollar, right? Because a dollar here is 74 rupees there. Just the conversion factor, 1 to 74 times multiplier. It just makes sense to take that risk, leave family, and just go get your bread for your family, build a family here, and just be successful. I know personally speaking, my father started here working at Pizza Hut, working at gas stations, working at, being a Pizza Hut driver while also being a truck driver, working 18, 19, 20, sometimes over out 24 hours. He'd tell me I was too young to know, but that's just the kind of work ethic and pedigree our people have. And that's a lot across the board, because there's a lot of successful brown families and Punjabi families that I've seen all across the world, especially here though. Just, that's one thing about them. And well, you come here, you start a family, and you start raising kids who grow up in a totally different culture, a totally different way of life, a totally different custom than what our parents grew up to be. When my dad went to school, if he was caught talking to a girl, the girl's parents would probably show up to my dad's place, and things would go down. And all I said was, if my dad was seen talking to somebody in a flirtatious way, like a girlfriend and any of that kind of way. Now, God forbid he ever got caught making out with somebody or anything like that. That's not something that's happened, or something at least I didn't know. But the way it's portrayed, the two different lifestyles, right? That's what I'm kind of setting this up as the two different lifestyles. So that's one world. Another world is we go to school. I've gone to school with white, black, Mexican, Asian kids, a whole pool of just diversity, a whole pool of just learning about each other. And all my friends, I have Mexican friends, I have black friends, I have white friends. I know how they wear their way of life, and it's in my opinion, it's just a beautiful pool of diversity that we got the chance to grow up in. But in doing so, you start to live and have customs and learn about one way, while also having this imaginary, intangible pressure on your shoulders to carry the tradition. Or you can't do A, B, and C because you should know better, or A, B, and C shouldn't happen because, like I said, knowing better, or we don't do that, or society doesn't accept that. And it's just two complaints, black and white, it's night and day. It's just two polar opposites. And you come here, and we're like I said, we're the first generation of immigrant parents. I am, at least. I don't know about others out there, if they're second generation or whatever, who's ever listening to this. But that disconnect from how my parents went to school, how I went to school, how I interacted with females or the opposite gender versus how my parents affiliated with the opposite gender, the family pressures that my dad had or my mom had to live up to a certain expectation, those kind of get carried over here. And it's kind of hard to ask somebody, a young man or a young lady, to do at such a ripe age, when they've seen one way of life and they might want to try it, they might want to live it, they might want to experience it, but these fears from our parents, from shit that we've seen in movies, from back home, you know, two words that really just piss me off are ijat, which I guess the English word will be pride, and society. Those are two words that just boil my blood, and I can't, like, I get like a weird feeling down my neck when I even hear those words and hear that getting applied to why you can't do certain things or why you can do certain things or what you can and can't do. Like, it just has ruined so many families. It just has ruined so many, I would say, good things. And it's a sense of pride. That's what it really is. It's all it is. It's a stroke to your ego, where just flat out parents don't know who their kids are. They don't. Parents don't know who their kids are, and when they find out who they really are, they can't handle it, or they're so surprised by it, or they're so naive to the fact that this could really be going on behind their back, when if you just sat back and looked at everything that was happening, it all makes sense to why it was happening. You know, it just is. Now, I might be blowing smoke out of my ass, but I think I can say that confidently. If you ask a certain parent what my kid is doing, it will be maybe like 10% of what actually goes on, compared to, like, I probably know, as a lot of friends, you know, this isn't just round community related, but I sense it more highlighted in our community, that I know my friends 10 times better than half their parents know their friends. It's just what it is, because as parents, from what I've seen, I don't know behind the doors, but it's a hit to their ijat and to their ego to say that, for instance, my kid has tried drugs. We'll say that. I'm somebody who has drank before, smoked weed before, as a lot of people have. I'm not shy away to say it, that I've tried it. But you tell ex-uncle, ex-auntie that such and such's kid smoked weed. Oh, that's gonna be the first reaction. Oh my God, really? And it's not gonna be, let's fix it, let's talk to him, why, what's going on. It's let's distance ourselves from that family because that kid does drugs, or he's a pothead, or he's gonna ruin my kid. And that mindset has gotten really troubling, because there's people out there who would be more willing to blame somebody else's kid than take a responsibility to say, my kid drinks, my kid smokes weed, my kid does this, and this is something my kid decided to do, and it's not ego hit to me. He's just young and he's learning. Our people are so afraid to do that, because why? Because society is gonna say that, hey, his kid drinks and smokes weed, please distance yourself from him, not knowing that, hey, this, just because this kid and everybody knows that this kid does it, doesn't mean your kid isn't. And in all likelihood, he's probably doing it too. He's just doing a great job in hiding it. And the reason he's hiding it is because he doesn't want you to find out, because you'll be disappointed. The parents will be disappointed. Not knowing that at one point, all of our parents were kids too. They had urges. They had certain things that every kid goes through, a want, a need, a desire to, oh my goodness, is that alcohol, is that weed? Though I've seen somebody else such and such do it, and they say it feels so good, like, oh, why don't I give it a try? It's just not being able to put yourself into a kid's shoes again, because it's like, bro, when you were a kid, the only thing you were doing, don't tell me the only thing you were doing was going to school, adding good grades, and just doing what your parents said. Because no kid does that. Very few kids do that. Every kid's natural tendency is to be rebellious, or is to try something new, or is to just explore. And that disconnect with, I would say, parents and kids in this first generation is very hard, and it's very troubling, because you create some sneaky ass motherfucking kids. You create some sneaky ass kids to where parents are being fooled to think that my kid is going to the library at 2 a.m. or he's going to a college visit 4 hours away from home. And if it was a college visit, why the fuck wouldn't I go with him? Or making fake emails. And these are all the things either whether I've done or friends that have told me they've done. And all it is a fear of having a conversation. All it is a fear of what mom and dad are going to say or how they will react to say, hey, maybe I might be going out. Like, because, and like, another thing our people do is they are so scared for us to see the real world and make mistakes on our own. They, good or bad, you know, I'm not demeaning how our people parent. I'm just highlighting the gaps, in my opinion. Apologize for the interruption, but as we were continuing the conversation, the camera died out on me a little bit. Had to find a charger, but what we were talking about is this struggle of uncomfortable conversations, right? And if we look at it at a very basic level to why we're scared, I would say as a kid, as a 15, 16-year-old, why was I scared to have a conversation with my parents about how I felt, or the things that I was doing, or what I was doing, right? And this will surprise a lot of people, but the people who are listening, the people who can relate, will know that I'm not hyperbolizing when I say that the way it's advertised, the way we see it in movies, that it's almost a life or death deal. And like I said, that could shock a lot of people, but it's the reality that we live in, the lens that we live through. That if somebody finds out that you're doing A, B, and C, it's not to say that death will happen, but that's your first inkling, which doesn't make sense. And to think about that level, that grand of a level of fear, is not okay. Is not okay, and we have to. That's just something that was poured into us by our people, by how they grew up, and that's kind of how they grew up back home in India and Punjab. If you know, say for instance, my father was dating somebody that the family didn't know about, was doing it behind people's back, or and just randomly a uncle or a chacha or whatever saw him, bro. Like he used to tell me, he was like, bro, that's like some things people get killed for, and it's like, what? You're telling me that, like, how, why? For what? That doesn't make any sense. But he's like, well, yeah, that's what it was like when we were growing up. And that's those two diametrically separate worlds are so hard to relate to, and the concessions that we make as kids are not speaking up, not talking, which leads to things another along the lines that our people don't really know about is mental illness. That's getting highlighted more and more with my generation. But you ask brown parents, depression, there's no such thing as depression. Literally, because, you know, as blessed as we are, and I went back to speaking about how hardworking and how go-getting our people are, we are, in a very sense, silver-spooned. Meaning, a lot of us, I know for me, I can personally say, there's anything that I wanted, I practically got as a kid. There's nothing that I didn't want that essentially I didn't get unless it was just absurd, like $200 sneakers. But now when I got older and I started working, I realized that it's really hard to always buy $200 sneakers, because 5 pairs of $200 sneakers are $1,000. And in my situation, that's a month of rent. So you learn it as you go, but, you know, in a sense of clothes, in a sense of not being worried about, will the lights turn on the next day, in a sense of not being worried about having food on the table. I didn't have to worry about those things as a kid. So as a parent, you know, what our people, what they tend to do is, well, it's like, I've given you everything you want. What else can you possibly need? But that thing that we want is something that we've always struggled to get from our parents, and very few there's a select few out there that I know do have this open door policy where it's like you come in, you guys can talk about whatever without any judgment, without any repercussions, without any punishments, and just about how you feel, things you want to do with your life, and without having to worry about society, without having to worry about what such and such is going to say, without having to worry about, because it's, for them, it's our kids' happiness is everything. And not anything, but as a parent, that's me becoming a parent at such a young age. I've learned a lot rather quickly, and knowing what I want to pass down to my son, I'm kind of already really rooted in. And because I grew up here, so I know what the urges are, I know what the temptations are, I know what will be thrown his way, in a sense. And so knowing that, hey, as a kid in the high school, there might be a push for him to smoke weed with some of his friends, right? There might be that push, that want. And it's totally okay for my son to give in. It's okay. That doesn't make me any less of a parent. That doesn't make me any less of a man. That doesn't make my son any less of a man. It just makes him a kid. Just makes him a kid. Now, with my son, when he has those urges to drink, to smoke, to do whatever, I would personally prefer to be under my roof. Because for me, I know the dangers and the outcomes of what can, if something bad happens if that happens outside, not under a roof, right? Not under a safe, secure roof. Because that's what, as a kid, when you're smoking and you're drinking and you're doing at parties, you're doing all this behind your parents' back, knowing that, oh, mom and dad found out they're going to kill me. Essentially, that's what it is. Mom and dad find out they're going to kill me. And I don't want to cast that fear over my son to say that if he were to try A, B, and C, that the ramifications would be life or death, because it's nothing's ever that serious. But my whole thing is, if he were to ever want those, you come to dad, and dad will get you right. Dad will get you the drinks. Dad will get you whatever. And he will make sure that you have such a good time that the next day you probably will never want to do it again. And if you do want to do it again, that's up to you. Dad's not going to judge. You make sure, now if it starts getting in the way of your grades, if it starts getting in the way of your livelihood, if it starts getting in the way of things you want to accomplish because you're just blasted and baked all day, then that's a problem. Obviously, I would address that, wouldn't let that go. But just the mere premise of being okay with him wanting to try and do certain things, but it being under my roof, under my supervision, is something that's very important to me, because I don't want my son not to think that, hey, you can't come to dad about such and such because his reaction will be this. That's something that I've quickly learned, that I don't want Prince to ever think that. Now, provide for him, do whatever I can. I have a go-get mindset, like a go-get-in mindset that was, I guess, passed down for me from my dad, because how the things that I'm doing right now, the way I'm choosing to live my life, I don't think, like, a lot of kids probably wouldn't want it the hard way, I guess. And that's just me. Like I said, that go-getter mentality that I have is probably from my dad, and I get my mom's loving, caring, open, big, gigantic heart. And so I just see myself as like a perfect blend of both, and being able to carry those on. Now, the way I choose to carry them on might be completely different than the way they want me to, but those are just the traits that I was given from them, and they can get mad at me for how I choose to carry them out. That's something totally different. But just the premise of, like, and some people might think totally different, but this is strictly to understanding. Understanding can go a long way for kids, especially that young and that fragile of an age, because at some point when that fear gets built up, it just, one, it never goes away, and two, you never open up the way you thought you would open up. And with time helps a lot, but that's very important at a young age, especially for a kid to see that, right? To see that. And it matters because the materialistic things are cool. They're awesome. They're amazing. If I didn't have them, maybe I'd want them. And if I had the open door policy, maybe you'd be looking at the things, the materialistic things, and be like, oh, maybe I didn't want the open door policy, but I would want this car. But it's just two ends of the spectrum. This is our end. And I think I'm speaking for a lot of people out there. That's the kind of connection we want to have with our parents. But our parents, whether they're too worried about society or ijjat or pride, or worried about what such and such's mom is going to think, or will such and such's mom talk to me, or will such and such's dad look at me the same way, or will I be involved in the same decision-making processes that I was made before just because my son or my daughter decides to do a certain thing. But it's like we aren't, and that's another thing that bothers the shit out of me is we're just like, to our parents. How do I say this? What I do positively makes my parents look 10 times better, and if I do something bad, it makes my parents look 100 times worse. Because let me tell you, if anybody out there doesn't know, I have a child and I'm 21 and I'm around. But what they won't tell you, right? So, and I moved out, so it makes it seem like I'm not a family man. I'm not. I gave the middle finger to my family. That's what everybody else says. Like if I were to ask 100 people in the Dallas community what I'm doing, there'd be 100 different answers, and the scenarios and the stories would be insane. It'd be mind-boggling, and I just sit back and laugh because I've heard some of them. But no one's gonna say that I graduated early from college. Nobody's gonna say I landed a full-time job out of school. Nobody's gonna say, nobody ever highlights the good things, but they always focus on the bad. And I don't know if that's society as a whole, but it doesn't matter the good that you do, they will always focus on the bad. So, you know, whether that's just a thing everybody does or something that I just feel like is more highlighted with us, I don't really know, but I just don't like it, man. Like, I just don't like it at all. And it's just something I'm not okay with, and something I don't really practice or see myself practicing. My friends have made mistakes. I didn't befriend them because of their mistakes. You know, I'm still friends with them. Mistakes don't define a person. If anything, like I said, that's something our people are so scared to do, but what they fail to realize is you need to hit a low point, you need to make a mistake, you need to learn from it. Because if you never learn, like if you think you're just gonna protect yourself or never make mistakes, then you're incredibly drunk. And I want to be drinking what you're drinking. Quite honestly, I want to be what you're on. Like, to think that my son is never gonna do A, B, and C, my daughter's never gonna do A, B, and C because she's my daughter and my daughter doesn't make mistakes and my son doesn't make mistakes. Like, that's stupid, man. That is so stupid. That's so stupid. Like, I would hope that you're living in a bigger box than that, but a lot of them they're just so confined in a little box to think that, oh, this isn't gonna happen, or my kid doesn't do this, or my kid doesn't do that. It's like, bro, learn your kid first, man. Learn what your kid wants, learn what he doesn't want, and don't base it off of what such and such's dad is saying because you guys think alike and you guys aren't talking about what your kid does or doesn't do, right? So there's battles that are always being fought. And I hope this first podcast, I'm being very kind of generalized. I'm talking about things that are like a viewpoint from far away. But I have a lot of details. I have a lot of stories. I just don't want to give it out immediately. I want to spark this idea, spark these conversations, bring in personal examples as well, because I think I'm coming in close to maybe about 45 minutes to an hour. I think if I'm keeping track. So I don't want to not bore, but I don't want to run this too long to where you're like, bro, I don't ever want to listen to this dude podcast again. They're like 3 hours long. But that's my whole goal with this, is to spark uncomfortable conversations that, whether that's be with our parents or whether that be amongst ourselves, of things that we need to do better. Because, you know, I've seen it, and right now I'm in that period of time where you kind of find yourself, but you also have a responsibility of taking care of somebody else, and that's a big one. And learning how to parent and what to do with your kids, you learn that rather quickly, but that's like the one thing that I already know as a father, is I want my son to be able to come home and be like, bro, I'm going home to my friend, and not in a way of, oh, we can do whatever, we can egg people's houses together as my dad. Like, no, not that. Just as somebody to talk to, man. Like, if my son needs me to talk to him, we need to talk, we should be able to talk. We should be able to talk just fine. Like, there shouldn't be a restriction, there shouldn't be a fear of me not being able to, because at the end of the day, if you telling your parents everything, like they're gonna want the best for you, but at least you keep them in the loop and they know, right? So, but what we do is we just go to our friends, and our friends are always going to give the same sneaky ass advice that we give ourselves. So nothing really gets accomplished there because it's a fear. But I've hoped to hopefully brought some insight on some problems that I see within our people. If this is, like I said, if this is a conversation you enjoyed listening to and you stay till the very end, please drop a comment, say you stayed till the very end. Drop subscribe to my channel. This will kind of be more of the content you'll be seeing forward is podcasts and less videos, or I might just make a separate channel for podcasts and kind of take all the videos down, but we'll see. Because this is something I thoroughly enjoyed. It's one of the most organic projects I've kind of chased after, because I know I have a lot to say. My viewpoints might be different, but I don't care. I will share them because I feel like a lot of people out there agree with them. They're just too scared to say them. And I could be completely off the boat on that. Or I could be in the ballpark, and I'm pretty sure I'm in the ballpark with that. But like I said, if you enjoyed it, drop a comment. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to try to put this out there. I'm going to try to keep myself accountable. So it's January, I think 28th. It's a Thursday. At the very latest, I'd like this up by tomorrow. So be on the lookout for it. You guys will see it when it drops. And just give it a listen. Give it a listen. And care to kind of just would like some feedbacks. Drop some comments. If you guys want some topics to discuss, want a co-host. If I'm too boring and you want somebody else, like bring a co-host on. You're too boring. We'll do that. We'll consider that. But y'all have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. Stay on top of y'all's work. I know Zoom University has resumed, so it's not the best, but let's get her done. Let's get her done, and hopefully, we're closing the chapter on COVID. Hopefully, vaccines are rolling out. Vaccinations are rolling out. Please be careful. Please be safe. It's all love. Y'all have a great rest of your day.